And without further ado, we are going to move into the role of government, the actual subject at hand. But before we can even talk about the role of government, we need to know exactly what government is. And government is pretty easy. This is the pretty easy to get at government. Government is a political system by which a country or community is administered or regulated. I mean, that is the easiest, cheapest, and best way to explain it. It's concise. Government is just this political system by which a nation is governed. If you have a council of citizens and there's no actual big government, the adults just meet together, that is the government, the adults. Our government is separated into a bunch of different branches, which we'll get into, but the government is simply your corporation. Like the government of your corporation is your stakeholders, your seat, the board of directors. The same thing as like the Congress. Your in England it's the Parliament. Um, some places are monarchy. Your government is the monarchy. That's just there's different forms of government, but your government is simply the political institution that you live under. Uh, and these things change all the time because people they no longer trust their governments and they abolish them. They revolution. They make changes and they just change government forms of like government. Right now, we're arguing between a capitalist society and a communist society. A capitalist society and a communist society are two different forms of government, and one private people own capital and equity and stuff and corporations that make money, and the other the government owns anything and they control who and where it goes. Socialism is a combination of both, but socialism always becomes communism because you can't guarantee equity. And we this is just something we're going to learn. But this is what the government is. Now, our specific government, it's set up a bunch of different branches. So like there's a separation of power. They keep the government from having total control, though it's failing miserably because we're pretty much under martial law here, and the government's overstepped its bounds. But it is what it is. So our to get this little like graphic here, the three branches of the government. We can read it in a second, but there's actually four branches of the government, but we'll get that at the end of this section. So the three branches of our government, according to the Constitution, that provided a separation of powers, we have the state legislators, which is the Congress, which is made up of the Senate and the House of Representatives. So that means the House of Representatives meet, they vote on a bill. If it passes, it goes to the Senate. The Senate votes on the bill. If it passes, it goes to the president. The president signs it or vetoes and sends it back to the Senate. That's the check and balances for the power of the Senate. But the Senate is they make the laws. They are the most powerful of the branches of government, and they control most of the wealth and stuff in our country and most of the things that goes on, which is the reason why we need term limits for them bitches because they get old and they don't give a and it needs to change. You got the executive power, which is they can enforce the laws, and it doesn't say it here, but they're also in charge of the military, like the commander in chief, which is the president, the vice president, and his cabinet. They're like the cabinet is the secretary of defense, secretary of the interior, like the heads of all these like areas. Um, they preside over the three, and they can veto things, and they can provide the checks and balances together to keep the legislative branch running, the judicial branch filled with seats, and the judicial branch is the Supreme Court and other federal courts. The federal courts they handle all federal crime. They do the federal grand juries and stuff, and the Supreme Court settles disputes between states, even though they don't really like to do that now because Texas and 25 other states wanted to sue four states, and 25 states wanted to be on part of them states, and the Supreme Court wouldn't even hear the case. They said, well, we're not even going to take it. Like, I mean, I'm not saying you. I mean, I have an opinion on what your decision should be, but you should have at least like that's your job. You should have at least heard the damn case. You flat out refuse to do your job, and I think that entire court needs to be like all those judges need to be arrested, um, tried for being unconstitutional and refusing to do their job, and thrown in prison for refusing to do their job because they refuse to do the job. I mean, that flat out you refuse to settle disputes between states. I'm not telling you what the dispute answer was, but because you didn't want to say yes or no to either side, you flat out refused to do your goddamn job. And if you don't do your job, you should be fired. Plain and simple. And that really irks me. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother podcast. And I was saying there's a fourth branch of this government that most people don't even mention, and that is us. We, the people, are the government. These people, I can't even see it here, but they work for us. These people work for us. We are in charge of them. We are the boss. We are part of the government, and we're no longer doing our part. We're no longer caring. We just vote things in and we hope the party does what we want, but we don't actually hold people accountable and we don't pay attention and we don't do our part, and shit just keeps getting more fucked up and more fucked up and more fucked up. For instance, we focus on the president, but we complain that like there's racism or whatnot, or our police are being racist, or all these other like problems people normally complain about happening in their local regions, and they have nothing but good things to say about their local mayors and the local governors and stuff, but it's the local mayors and local governors and stuff that are causing those problems, not the president or the federal government that you keep putting your focus on. But that that is another problem. Like us as the people, we have to do our part as the fourth branch of the government, and because that's a separation of powers. Like they get their authority to govern by our consent. So if the separations of powers between the three branches of government previously mentioned fail, it falls on us as the last branch of the government to consent to the government's authority or not, and abolish the ties that binds and replace them if that's what's deemed necessary. And we're not doing that now. We need to really do our job because yeah, most people don't pay attention to anything like their local. They keep voting the same local people in, and they keep blaming the big government for their problems, and it's the local people that are causing the damn problems. I gotta check my notes real quick. So yeah, that's the separation of powers